Hello everyone, last but not least, we're back again for the last chapter in biology for grade 9, and which will be transport in animals. Circulatory system, like the transport in animals here, is depending majorly on, the majority on the circulatory system, which consists mainly from the heart and the blood vessels. In this chapter, we'll be going through each component of the circulatory system and how does it work. The circulatory system here is consists of tubes, which mainly they are called the blood vessels, like veins, capillaries and arteries, with a pump which is called the heart, and the valves, which we will know each one of them in detail in the upcoming lesson. Okay. The valves here, they actually make sure that the blood only flows in one direction and not back again. The transport system, we've got the single circulation system as in the fish, or a double circulation system as us mammals. For the fish here, it has 2 heart chambers. Meanwhile, for the human being or mammals, they have 4 heart chambers. And the blood here absorbs oxygen through the gills. Meanwhile, the blood here passes through the heart twice and oxygenated in lungs to a heart, to body, and back to the heart again. Here, it's actually released in the body cells and then back to the heart. The advantage is delivers great blood flow rate to tissues around the body as the heart bumps the oxygenated blood to it from the lungs. This is the heart structure. This is the superior vena cava. This is the aorta. This is the pulmonary artery. And this is the pulmonary vein, the bicuspid valve. Please do remember, because we're going to explain each one of them afterwards. And this is the left atrium, the left ventricle. Remember that the left here is actually the opposite of yours. It's the right in your hand, but the left for the heart. So here you would just say, how's it left? No, honey, it's left here. The left atrium is your right side. The left atrium, the left ventricle. Let me just go through one by one. The first thing that I want you to know about the heart is it's divided into 4 chambers, which is as if it's going through this and this. This is 1, 2, they are called atriums. This is the right side and this is the left side. These 2 over here are called ventricles. This is the right side and this is the left side. The right side and the left side are divided by this barrier, which we call septum. This tissue, it's called septum, which divides the right side from the left side of the heart. And between each atrium and ventricle, these are the valves. The valves which separates the atrium from the ventricle, and the main function of the valves is to allow the blood only, or actually not allow, but more likely as controlling that the blood only goes in one direction. We've got the bicuspid valve here. It has only 2, which is bi. And here it's tricuspid valve because it has 3, it attaches to 3 sides. We've got the aortic valve over here. And we've got the inferior vena cava here and the pulmonary valve over here. The pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. From the right ventricle to the lungs. So the pulmonary artery here, it carries, as we all know, that arteries carry oxygenated blood, the blood which is filled with oxygen, and the veins carry non-oxygenated blood. But there is a specification here. For the pulmonary artery, pulmonary, that means it comes from the lungs. So it carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle, and it takes it to the lungs to be oxygenated, and then it takes it back to the heart because it's already oxygenated. The septum, we said that it separates the left and the right side of the heart. The pulmonary vein, please do focus here, It's a vein. So you would just say like, yeah, it carries the deoxygenated blood. But here when it comes to the pulmonary, there's an exception. The pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. But the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. As for the left atrium, which is on our right side, it collects the oxygenated blood and pump it to the left ventricle, because the atrium is the chamber, or we can say like the part on the top, so it carries it to the part in the bottom, which we call the left ventricle. Then the left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood to the body via the aorta, which is over here on the top. The aorta here carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the rest of the body. As for the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve, the one which has 2 heads and the one has 3 heads, it prevents the backflow of the blood into the atria when the ventricles actually contract. The pulmonary and aortic valves prevent the backflow of the blood from the arteries into the ventricles, which we call them semilunar valves. The cardiac cycle here. The cardiac diastole, all chambers are relaxed and blood flows into the heart. This is the first thing. Then we have the atriosystole, which the ventricles diastole. The atria, which is over here, contracts, pushing all, as you can see here, all the blood into the ventricles, the ventricle here. Then we've got the atrial diastole, ventricle systole, which is after the atria relaxes, the ventricle contracts and pushes the blood out of the heart very quickly, and it goes where? It goes to the lungs to be oxygenated, then it comes back through here, and then it fills in from the atrium to the ventricle and pushes it through the aorta into all of the body. This would be the cardiac cycle. The physical activity makes the heart beat more quickly and more deeply for an increased circulation of blood, so that more oxygen and glucose can get to the muscles. Okay, as an ECG trace, the electrocardiograph, the electrical activity of the heart can be monitored by the electrocardiogram, pulse rate, and listening to the sounds of the valves closing. That's why when you go actually for a heart checkup or like a major general checkup, you will go through this device, which practically measures every single beat and all the things that come associated with the heart. The physical activity makes the heart beat more quickly and more deeply for an increased circulation of the blood. So also we said that more oxygen and glucose can actually get to the muscle because it needs its energy to functionize. The coronary heart disease. This disease is always going to be one of the major diseases that strikes the heart, especially for those who are not watching, they're not exercising enough, they're not watching or monitoring their diet in general as a lifestyle. You will find out that they are more into fatty and saturated sort of food, and they're not watching. The coronary artery becomes blocked, interrupting the supply of blood to the heart muscle, because like the heart in general is just a muscle. It needs to be it needs to be nutrient. It has to feed on something. So it's actually supplied by blood, which comes from the arteries. Okay then, what happens then? Because when you just block the way that that sort of place gets its food from, then it cannot functionize properly. So the heart muscle cells are deprived of oxygen and glucose, and poisonous wastes such as lactic acid build up. Part of the heart muscle stops contracting, causing a heart attack, because the main thing of, or actually how does the heart pump the blood by contracting and relaxing. This is what we call like a pump, because it contracts and then when it releases, it just relaxes and releases the blood to all the body. And also caused by stress, smoking, poor diet or poor lifestyle, and sometimes it can be genetically. It can be prevented. How can I stop a person from getting coronary heart disease? Is like advise them not to smoke, avoid fatty food and exercise regularly to make them like a healthy sort of a person. And sometimes, like, how do I treat this this person who has coronary heart disease? The first thing, since the artery is blocked, I will make sure that this blockage is removed. I can use sort of procedures like many of them, some of them are mentioned here, like stents, angioplasty and bypass. Or I could go like with a medical sort of treatment, like giving them aspirin to make sure that there is no clot, no clotting of blood and blocking the vessel sort of passing the blood. Here we come to the arteries, veins and the capillaries. They are all classified under one term, which we call the blood vessels. We have arteries, we have veins, we have capillaries, the tiniest part of the blood vessels. The artery here, they transport high pressure blood away from the heart. They have elastic walls, expand and relax as blood is forced out, causes pulse, and also it has thick walls to withstand the high pressure, rings of muscle narrow or widen artery to control the blood flow, and also the valves prevent the backflow of the blood. The vein here, it transports low pressure, it's the opposite of the arteries. It here actually transports low pressure of blood to the heart, but here away from the heart it's to the body. But here it's from the body to the heart. Blood is at low pressure, but nearby muscles squeeze veins and help push blood to the heart. The large diameter and thin walls reduce the resistance to flow of blood, and also one cell thick walls for easy diffusion. Okay, the capillaries. They allow substance to diffuse into the cells, so they are highly branched, large surface area, and also the capillary beds consistently supplied with fresh blood, so diffusion occurs. For today we'll be stopping here in order to finish the next time, inshallah.